Alfredo, Zacarias, and David Lacon stood in the cold last night, hovering near each other, waiting to say a word about Ishmael Moises Lacon Yak, their brother, who died in the explosion across the street a year ago today. He worked in Sushi Park and sent most of his paycheck home to his parents in Guatemala. Nicholas Figueroa also died. His parents, Anna and Nick, come downtown every Thursday afternoon. They come from East Harlem to tend to the empty lot, to keep the photos fresh and laminated. Last night, some 70 or so friends of theirs stood in the chilly air to grieve, to cry, to light candles. There were children, there were abuelas. I asked two of the little ones, do they give hugs? And they said yes. And then they hugged each other. They didn't hug me. It was all right. It's okay. White bags written on with black Sharpies offered messages of longing and love and missing. We miss you. It will never be the same without you. We will never forget you. You are loved. And they laid these bags out in the shape of a cross that was lit with these candles so that the people in the buildings around would look down and see the lit cross and imagine that not even death can put out the light of love. Anna spoke, Mommy. She wasn't going to because she told us she was nervous, but speak she did, leaning on the strong arms of her husband, Nick Sr., standing behind her. She spoke of Nicholas and the gifts he gave her, of love and laughter and hope and joy. She said she feels guilty in between the pangs of grief. In the spaces between the pangs, she feels guilty, and she can't wait for the next one to come so she can feel her sorrow. Sometimes we need our faith in the resurrection to comfort and to console. Struggling to use my kindergarten Spanish, I said, lo siento, la muerta de los jóvenes. I'm grieving the loss of the young ones. And then I said, the resurrection is not about ghosts. It is about the sense that we will meet the ones we've lost on the other side. And this is not a uniquely Christian sentiment. Buddhists believe in a rebirth. It was the Jews who first believed in the resurrection. There is some kind of sense that life keeps going on, and God knows we need that hope sometimes. And in the meantime, I said, we live with those we've lost in ourselves as memory and as experience. Who knows what I'm talking about? Sometimes I need my faith in the resurrection, progressive, liberal person that I am, to comfort those that mourn, to comfort my own anxiety. My mommy is sick. I have no idea when she'll breathe her last. But I cherish the belief, I lean into the belief in the resurrection that someday she will be strong and free from pain and she won't hurt any longer and she'll be sitting on a porch, a white porch with her mother, my grandmother, my dear, who will have her spittoon near her for the snuff she enjoys. And she will shoot a very straight and accurate line into the spittoon. And my mom will rock in the rocking chair like she did when she was little, and she will shell peas next to her mommy as the smell of magnolias waft all around them. And as greens sitting on a pot on the kitchen stove send up little steam bubbles. No more pain. No more heartbreak, no more Jim Crow, no more landlord taking more than your share. Oh, just peace. I need my faith in the resurrection. But how do we talk about resurrection? How do we talk about Easter in and Easter out with fresh imagination? How do we think about resurrection in times like these when an explosion displaces scores of people and kills two men just because the landlord is greedy and decides to take a shortcut? How do you talk about the resurrection? How do you talk about the resurrection when my neighbors here in the East Village can barely afford their rent and have to fight powers and principalities to stay in their housing? How do you talk about the resurrection? When our seniors have lost their pensions, how do you talk about it? How do you talk about it when all around the globe there are explosions of hatred and anger and vitriol? Brussels, Paris, San Bernardino, and that's just the stuff the so-called Muslims did. Let's not forget about Charleston. How do we talk about a resurrection when in cities all over the nation, the haves have so much more than the have-nots, you can hardly speak it into existence? When the discourse in the presidential election has literally descended into hell. Let's talk about each other's wives, hello? How do you talk about the resurrection in times like these with fresh theological imagination? Listen, I have no doubt at all that God can do what Scripture says. For me, God is ultimate liberator, and God can open up the seas so people can walk to freedom. I have no doubt that God can make dead wombs live again. I have no doubt that God can put flesh on dead bones if she feels like it. I have no doubt that God is able. Don't you know God is able to heal blind eyes, to put food in hungry bellies, to straighten up our walk so we can get to the promised land? I have no doubt that God can resuscitate atrophying muscles so people can dance all around Jerusalem just like John and march to the polls and vote. I have no doubt that God can hover over the oceans and speak a word that creates. I have no doubt that God can send angels to earth to prophesy about healing and to sing about baby saviors in mangers. I have no doubt about this story. I question some of it, like the part where some theologians want to emphasize that somehow God took God's baby child and grew him up to adulthood just so he could put him on a cross and torture him. No, I don't believe that. But I believe that people killed love because we kill love because it scares the hell out of us. And I believe that God is able to take even something like that and make something better out of it. I believe that. A young Muslim woman lives in a community in which her people are being targeted. And by that I mean kids being beat up in school. I mean people being tripped who have on hijabs. I mean people being tortured for being Muslim. And what she has done, this one who is an object of scorn and derision, is to start a hug a Muslim, talk to a Muslim booth right near her house. So over coffee and donuts, one relationship at a time, she answers the questions that are in the hearts of the not-so-learned and makes peace. And so it is. We're left looking at the meaning of a murdered Messiah who was snatched, we believe, out of a grave because God will not let love die. God will not let the movement for justice and reconciliation die. God will not let salvation stall because ignorant people kill love out of fear. And I have no doubt that God can do the miraculous. I've seen the miraculous. But I am skeptical this morning, this Easter morning. I'm skeptical about people. I'm skeptical about whether or not we will get it right. I'm skeptical about whether or not we will let God's intent for humanity, in fact, be our intent. If God's vision of a whole and healed world will, in fact, inspire us to have that vision ourselves. Why am I skeptical? Crazy things are happening. There's a man named Ishmael who runs a construction company who's working in the parsonage where I live. And he's a nice man, a nice Muslim man. We do the chat thing, hi, how are you? Good morning, Pastor. Good. How are you, sir? Did you see the news? Wow, that's a little crazy. Is the work finished yet? When is the work going to be finished? Do you have a sense of when the construction work is going to be finished? Yeah, we do that. The other day, he just volunteered to me. He said, I'm a Muslim, but I'm with Mr. Trump. What? Talk about things that make you go, I don't think we shouldn't let those people in America. Aren't those your people? They're not my people. Those Muslims who do murder are not my people. True that. But how would you know which ones are the good ones and the bad ones? He said, let's have them sit in an interview. Let's have them take a test. And then that way we'll know who not to let in. I'm just telling you, I'm with Mr. Trump. Don't let those Muslims in. Okay. Have a good day. I just had to walk away from that. Are you kidding me? We've got Muslims saying close the borders to Muslims. I wonder how we talk about resurrection in times like these. In the midst of this horrible and terrifying war of ideals. I have no doubt about God's ability to make what is dead and dying and putrefying and rancid live again. But I am a little skeptical about human beings right in here. A little skeptical about whether we'll get it. Will we get it, really get it? That love is the only way to heal ourselves? Will we really get it? I mean, truly get it? That we're more alike than different? Will we get it? That hatred is only going to beget hatred, and the only way to save ourselves and save each other is through revolutionary love? I'm not skeptical about the resurrection, but I'm wondering about us. The gospel writers don't all agree on the details of this phenomenon. Mary Magdalene's at the tomb, or it's Mary and another Mary, or a couple more Marys and some other women. Okay, there's some women. The stone is rolled away, or it's not, and an angel comes down in a bolt of lightning, and the stone rolls away. There's nothing left in the tomb at all, or there's two angels in the tomb and a white linen cloth. They didn't sync that all up. But they all agree that Jesus' body is not there. And even still, though he is risen, though God has raised him, the gospel writers, I think, understand this too. The empty tomb didn't cause the faith of the disciples. What caused the faith of the disciples were the encounters that they had with the risen one. They had an encounter with the living Christ, and that's how they knew he was alive. Mary hears his voice and turns around, and yeah, there he is, and she has faith. The ones in the upper room, including the doubting one, have a close encounter of the holy kind, and then they believe. The two walking on the road to Emmaus are walking with Jesus and don't recognize him, but when he breaks bread with them, their hearts burn and they remember and recognize him. It is the living Christ in human experience that leads to faith. We believe that Jesus lives because we encounter the living Christ. We encounter the living Christ. The resurrected one is a transformed one, a changed one. This body moves in and out of the perception of the people. It's not always clear, but this is the one that goes ahead of them, the one who goes ahead to set a space, to make a table, to make a wide open path to the reign of God. And he is not on the cross. And he is not in that cave. We are not going to find the living Christ looking in dead spaces. We find the living Christ among the living who are grieving, who are struggling, who are getting up and going to work every day. We find the living Christ among the mommies taking care of babies and the fathers taking care of grandchildren. And the living Christ, my friends, is right here. Living, breathing, speaking, teaching, singing, in the curve of an arm in a dance, when the trumpet is being blown like Gabriel is coming back again. The living Christ is here, changing diapers, bandaging knees, soothing hot foreheads with cool hands. Right here, rehearsing the reign of God, right here, right now, marching and protesting and dying in and rising up again, keeping the baby safe in we care. The living Christ is standing in line, registering to vote. He will pull the lever and believe that he's making a difference. The living Christ is tweeting hope-filled words, writing prayers on the Facebook. He is confronting his friends when they are racist and sexist and homophobic at water fountains. He's busy, the living Christ is, right now, campaigning to change minds in North Carolina. He's mourning Brussels, and he's standing in solidarity with his Muslim neighbors. He is resurrected, he is embodied, he is living in a man named Jorge, who we know as Pope Francis, who on Maundy Thursday washed the feet, not of 12 Christian men, which is the law. No, he broke the rules and washed the feet of Muslims and Hindu and Christian refugees, men and women. Just a washing and washing and washing. And when he got through washing, he kissed their feet. Christ is living in that, right there. The risen one lives in the nuns on the bus, who will do a campaign to make sure that there are not laws that hurt women. The living Christ has not forgotten the fallen and will keep on working for justice until there are no more Trayvons and no more Erics and no more Sandys and no more Ramalis. The living Christ is right here, meeting with the grieving, holding hands with the stumbling, redeeming the lost, giving new insight to those who are blinded by fear, transforming the worst bigot into the biggest ally for justice, working for a living wage. The living Christ is here, right now, when a trans man makes wedding vows, when a struggling family is working to keep their apartment, in the teacher looking for a new vocation, in the grieving best friend planning a memorial, in a biracial woman working for racial justice, trying to claim both parts of her heritage. Oh, the living Christ is right here. And my skepticism lightens when I watch, when I pay attention, when I listen, when I see you, the compassionate agnostic, the come to church almost all the time atheist. Y'all know who you are. Amen. The underemployed actor, the lonely senior, the child full of wonder, the couple whose love is lost, but they're working to find it again. He's present, the living Christ is, in the breaking of bread. I'm not talking about when we say the magic words only. I mean when you're at Pangea or Kosi and you're breaking bread in your house, with your family, the living Christ is present right there, right there. In songs sung, in prayers uttered, in hands held tight, in grief and in joy, you are proof of life. You are proof of life. You prove that God rises up in everyday, ordinary human beings. And you don't have to be a Christian into your heart, for God to rise up in you and live in you and use your fabulous ordinariness to change the world. You are proof of life. And you heal me when I stand on the precipice of doubt, wondering, what in the hell? I know you share my sense of despair, but I hope you also really share my sense of hope. Wait, the songwriter says, there's no mountain too great. Hear these words and have faith. Have faith. He lives in you. He lives in me and watches over everything she sees. In your reflection, God lives in you. Hey, resurrection people, thank you for healing and giving me hope. Happy Easter.